if you feel free to use the chat or the Q&A areas for any questions that you have, and we'll get to them as we can. So first of all, we have Felicia James. She's our moderator, and she's a project manager at Carollo Engineers, working with wastewater and water and wastewater utilities. And Felicia started with MESA when she was in high school, and we love that. So maybe she can share one of her favorite MESA memories with us. She has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Stanford and a master's in civil from University of Texas at Austin. Not to mention, she's a registered professional engineer in 3 states. So welcome, Felicia. Next, we have Katya. Katya, wave to everyone. Katya was born in Guadalajara, Mexico. And as a young girl, at 7 years old, she decided that she wanted to work for NASA. Guess what? She works for NASA. So dreams come true. She has a direct bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from UCLA. And she was an intern at NASA JPL. And she now works there full-time as an electrical engineer. And she's going to tell us some very cool things about her work there. And Katya was involved when she was at San Diego City College, and she has continually given back to MESA. So we're really appreciative of that. Not to mention the fact that she's in our marketing video. So if you go to our website and take a look at the main video that's on the front page, you'll see her. Welcome, Katya. Denice is another friend of ours. She's a lead engineer in systems control for General Electric. And she says that she really enjoys being part of teams, which is such a critical skill for engineers. For some of the folks who were on the first session with Vu, he talked about how communications is a critical skill. So is team building and communications as part of a team. So I hope Denice can shine some light on that. She's also had several roles at NASA and NASA Ames, and she has a bachelor's in electrical engineering from San Jose State. And she began in MESA while at Kenyatta College. Yeah, welcome. And then last but not least, we have Emerson Malca. So Emerson was born and raised in Peru, came to the States, but he graduated from San Francisco State in computer engineering, electrical engineering, and computer science. He's currently an engineering manager at Apple Books, which is cool. But what I think is a lot cooler is that he's an entrepreneur. So when he was still a student at Sac State, he started a mobile education tech company called InClass. He later started another ed tech company called Study Room in 2012, and it was used by over 1 million college students in the US, and it raised $500,000 in investment money. That's awesome. And he joined Apple in 2018. He, just like everyone else on this group, always volunteers and helps with MESA. So we're really, really happy to have everyone. Can we clap and give a hello to everyone in the chat? Yeah. And then I will turn it over to Felicia.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so good to see such a big group here. Thank you for those introductions, and a little bit you asked about my high school MESA experience. I remember going to Sac State for MESA Day, and the biggest event there, at least for me at the time, was the egg drop. And we would climb to the top of one of the buildings. I think it was the engineering building at the time, before a lot of the new structures have been built, with our creations for protecting the egg, and watch those drop off the building. So that was a big one. Although my favorite activity was doing the penny float. I don't think that one is done anymore at the MESA Day events, but that was a lot of fun. So big value for me was the SAT training classes that we got during the high school time, and helped prepare me to get into college. So with that, I will pass it over. I've got some questions to ask our panel members here. We'll also be monitoring the chat, so if you have some questions you want to throw out as well, that would be great. We've already talked about introductions and where people are from. Denice, if you could tell us about your college and major a little bit, I think that would be great. And then we'll go around.
Yeah, sure thing. So hi, everyone. I'm Denice. Nice to meet everyone virtually. I went to San Jose State, as you guys know, obviously. I majored in electrical engineering, and I was born and raised and grew up here in the Bay Area, so I'm super local.
All right. And can you tell me a fun fact about yourself?
I love to read about the gut microbiome and its effects on the blood-brain barrier.
Oh, that's cool. Emerson, how about you?
Me? Well, I did computer engineering at San Francisco State, which is, a mix of electrical and computer science. And it focused a lot of microcontrollers overall, but of course, the computer science part and the software engineering side of things is what pulled me more like towards the last semester. And that's kind of where I started doing building apps. And this was back in 2010. So it was like iOS 3, iOS 4. Barely, when the iPhone was becoming very, very popular. So it was a really good timing to do that as well.
And a fun fact about yourself?
A fun fact, well, I came from Peru, so I was an international student. And when you come here, you have to declare your major. I was this close to not saying computer engineering. I was going to do acting because I really enjoy acting and theater and everything. But I did computer engineering.
All right, thank you. Katya.
Yeah, so I went to UCLA. I studied electrical engineering. And a little fun fact about that is that actually when I started at UCLA, the major was only called electrical engineering. But by the time I graduated, they changed it to electrical and computer engineering. So I started with one thing and finished with another. And so I did take those classes in between. So it was kind of like a weird transition period that we were going through. So yeah, it's pretty cool that I got to have that in the name of my degree. And what I loved the most was circuits. So that's what I primarily focus on. And a fun fact about me is that I love anything scary movies, scary books. I have an entire, so this whole shelf here and the one underneath is all Stephen King books. I just love it. And it's my dream to one day write a horror novel.
That sounds great. Now, would your horror novel also include circuitry?
I feel like circuitry already alone is a horror novel to most people.
It's great. Well, thank you. Well, I'd like to have you all share about what you do at work, kind of what your everyday job life is, and then, how would you explain it to the group here? So we'll start again with Denice.
Okay, yeah. So I work for General Electric, and General Electric has many businesses under its belt. But currently, I'm part of the renewable energy part of General Electric, and so now their subsection is to make battery energy storage systems. So a lot of you turn on your light at home, you don't really think about where it's coming from. It's there, yay, right? But that power source comes from somewhere, and the source from where it comes from, sometimes electrical producers can't produce enough energy. That, or sometimes their energy production equipment fails. And so then you have the problem, oh, well, how are we going to provide energy to hundreds of thousands of people that connect to us, right? So that's kind of a short summary of what the business does that I work for. It provides battery energy storage solutions. So think of it as a backup power source for huge power companies. And also, and different countries around the world, this isn't just the United States, it's actually worldwide, where you have what's called an unstable electrical grid, which, I'm sure many of you know, many countries have power outages, just random throughout the day. And that happens because of instability in the grid from which your power source comes from. So GE's battery energy storage systems fix that, in summary.
That sounds great. Do you think that would help us when, at least in Northern California, when we have these power outages, what you're describing would be for a large system? Are there also smaller systems that would provide a backup, say maybe for a neighborhood or for individual houses and businesses?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And actually I'm glad you asked, because that actually already exists for, I guess it would be for knowledgeable people, that know that, yes, you can have a backup source for your own house. But yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. All right, Emerson, how about you?
So I'm currently an engineering manager at Apple, specifically for the Apple Books team. And of course, Apple does a ton of stuff in a lot of things, but services and software is of course one of the things. So so that's kind of where I focus on Apple Books. I started out as an engineer, as a software engineer, and just started managing about a year ago. So it's been fun. One of the things, so I manage a team of 6 engineers, and one of the things that I came to realize after joining Apple was how managers are a little different from other companies. I was always thinking that my path was going to be joining as a software engineer, maybe lead a project, maybe do management, and then maybe move on to product management later on. So less on the software side, more on the product and user understanding side of things. But the managers at Apple, or at least where I'm at right now, they want us to be more technical, and they want us to be more product savvy as well. So ended up being like a really nice thing where like I did have the technical background coming from software engineering, and from doing my startup in the past, I get a lot of product sense as well. So that kind of merges one of the things that Apple kind of was looking for. So it's got an opportunity to manage a team now.
That's great. When you were managing a team, how did Apple support you with the skill sets needed because that's a very different thing, being able to understand the technology side of it. But then, you're talking about 6 people that you're trying to coordinate and deal with so that the team can be successful. What were some of the things that helped you?
Yeah, I mean, well, definitely. I mean, I think from the very beginning when I was in college, right, like all the different opportunities, volunteering, mentorship, leadership opportunities. I did this leadership conference in the past as well. Like all those things really help you along the way. And then of course I put that in practice when I was running my startup. So
Okay.
hiring people there and managing people there, and establishing the vision, and then the day-to-day process and everything, right? So today I did have a fresh experience right there. And just being in a startup too is, especially in education, is part of that. Means that you're part of an ecosystem, so you do get to talk and meet and learn from a lot of other founders. So meaning, and then of course you get the same thing at Apple. At Apple, you have an ecosystem, you have classes, and you have a network of people that want to mentor you, want to support you, want to guide you, or even like just your peers themselves that where you can bounce ideas with them.
All right, that sounds great. So for everyone who's participating in the Student Leadership Conference, you heard it right here, gives you good project management job skills. Katya, how about you at your job?
Yeah, so I've been in and out of a bunch of different projects. The cool thing about NASA is that you essentially work for a mission, and you may be assigned to several missions at once. So when I first started working during my internship, I was working for both a Department of Defense mission and then the Perseverance rover. So it was really cool, the fact that I got to work on something that is now on its way to Mars, and I wasn't even graduated with college yet. But since then, I currently am working on the Europa Clipper mission, which is an orbiter that is going to be going to Jupiter's moon, Europa. So Europa is a really cool moon because it is made up of more water than we have here on Earth, and it is also smaller than Earth. So it is a really awesome place that we really want to investigate and do science on. And the specific part of the mission that I focus on is what is called ground support equipment. So we have to test everything. And I would actually say that the longest part of every single mission is the actual testing that has to go on, because we test at every single phase. So say you have the design of the computer, right? So we have the computer, it goes through its preliminary testing. You add a little bit more to it, you test it again, you add a little bit more to it, and now you put it into its final enclosure, you test it again. So at every single level, you test it, but you can't test, for example, the computer, which is what we work on testing. You can't test the computer fully if everything that it's expecting to receive and to send out isn't properly hooked up. So the thing about circuits is that you have to complete the circuit, otherwise you're not going to be able to test it at all. So we build simulations, and that is what my job is my group designs simulations for the entire spacecraft at the different levels that are needed. So at the beginning, we have simulations that simulate absolutely everything, including the instruments, the camera, is the way that everything is going to be moving, rotating, absolutely everything we simulate. And then as it starts getting built a little bit more, our simulations can be a little bit less developed, but it's easier now because we've already simulated everything at the beginning. So now we can just take some things away as we go higher and higher in the testing process. So it's really fun because I get to learn pretty much everything about the spacecraft as a whole, because it is our job to simulate it perfectly. And the really cool thing about it as well is that we're a really, really small group. And a lot of the things that we need to create, they're not just things that you can go online and, like, oh, I want to purchase a simulator for this magnetometer. You can't do that. So we design everything custom, and we protect everything. Everything has to be super protected. We cannot hurt anything at all that we connect to. We have to give our stamp and seal of approval that anything that I designed is not going to hurt anything that you created. So there's a little bit of pressure that comes with that as well. But it's really a lot of fun to be able to be involved with every single stage of the mission, and also every single stage of what you create. Because when we create something, since it's custom, we're the ones designing it, we're the ones doing the actual PCB layout or cable design online. And then we're the ones that send it out. We're the ones that get it delivered. I get it delivered to my office. I take it out. I go into the lab. I test it. When something goes wrong in the test bed, once we finally deliver, I'm the one that they're calling up. Hey, your thing isn't working. So it's a lot of fun to be able to be involved in the whole process.
That sounds great. That sounds like a lot of pressure. So speaking about pressure, we've got a question from the audience, which I'm going to throw out there, talking about transitioning from academia, so transitioning from school into the workforce. One of the things I remember was there's no answer in the back of the book. So, in college, you go through a problem set. It's like, I just need to go down and I'll do this. And I know that there's a right answer and I know there's a wrong answer. Denice, can you tell us about how you've done that transition from kind of in your day-to-day job, and how that's different from kind of the mode and everything you got used to in getting through school?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, of course again. So in school, you're definitely in kind of a defined schedule, right? You go to class, school, stay up all night, try to pass the exam, try to get in your homework on time, and the story continues until you leave, right? But work is actually not that way, unless you get a super stressful job. I'm sorry, but it's not really like that in reality, right? So that when that's over, I think the common thought process is, oh, how I was in school is how I have to be at work. And I think you'll realize that that's not completely true. However, I will say the kind of student you are in school is probably going to be what your work dynamic or work, the way you will relate at work. Okay, so the transition from that to work for me was actually not that difficult, because in my experience, I had many internships, so I was kind of used to the flow. But if I didn't, if I went straight from school to a job, then my explanation is as follows. People at work have normally been there for years and are tired of the routine, so they're super flexible. They're going to be nice to you because you're new, you're fresh out of college, right? You're probably going to know a lot about how the internet works, how computer works, but then your work crew will definitely be a little older than you. And but they will provide guidance as to what systems you will be working on, and that's kind of, what do they call that? The learning curve, right? Yeah, but definitely, of course, you want to do your best when you get your job, but just don't sweat it. If they hired you, you fit the mode of what they wanted. So just don't overthink it. Just be a team player for everybody. Again, because you're going to be new, so you want to absorb all the information you can. And then, in the future, climb up the ladder to whatever direction you decide, because not all engineers become managers. Some engineers like dealing with the technical forever, right? I'm one of those examples. I just love working with engineering and science and all that. But yeah, you can go management, or you can go engineering, or anything else you decide. You might want to go back to school, right? So you just never know.
That's great. That's great. Appreciate those insights. Kind of some of the other questions are, thinking about where you are now and going back to, if you could take a shuttle back in time and talk to yourself, say as a first year or second year student, what advice, excuse me, what advice would you give to yourself or to someone now, like our participants here? Emerson?
I want to say try different things. As I mentioned, like one of the things that as a computer engineer, I was doing a lot of stuff, doing electrical stuff, but I never really touched the software. I had classes, but I never really touched the software, wanted to do things until my last semester when I was doing my senior project. And at that point is where I started really enjoying that part, but I didn't try it until the very end, right, till the very last semester. So if I had tried it a while ago, I would have realized that a lot earlier enough, and I would have done cooler things earlier than what I had. So I would say that like if there are things you want to try them out. It's not the end of the world. Like I know a lot of people feel a lot of pressure, and like I think when I was in college, I had 2 jobs that I was working on campus and 3 other jobs that I cannot talk about. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure from the classes and everything. There's not a lot of time. But if there's something that you really want to try, go for it, and even over the weekends or something.
I think that's great. That's great advice. Thank you for that. Katya, there's a question specific for electrical engineering. Everyone kind of has their specific role that they focus on. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about all the different aspects of electrical engineering? And how do you pick something?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because when I was in school and I was taking classes in all of these different subsections or subdivision of EE, it's really hard, because especially when you love so many of them. But what I decided to do is, there were a couple, 2 or 3 that I was truly interested in. And so what I was doing is I was taking some higher level, more advanced classes in each one of them. But it's not enough to do that. You also have to do your research and try to figure out what is it that this person would actually do in a job. Because it's one thing to like the material. For example, I was really interested in semiconductor physics, which is something that a lot of EEs have to take. I loved it. I love the material. I love the class. I love quantum physics. But when it really got down to it on what, an engineer that specializes in this actually does outside of the material that you already know you love, it just wasn't something that really interested me as much as what an electronics engineer does. So it's really important to not only figure out which of these classes it is that you like the most, but also what is it that this type of engineer actually does in industry. And it's not very hard to figure that out. Not only can you, you have the whole internet at your disposal, but also I'm the kind of person where I would just go on LinkedIn and find somebody that has the kind of job that I was interested in, sending them a message. A lot of people are willing to talk to you. I do this all the time. I get messages all the time from students saying that they're interested in electronics, but they don't really know what the day-to-day lifestyle is, and if I could answer some of their questions. So I get on calls with them. I do it pretty much maybe 5 times a month. Another thing that I used to really love doing is looking at YouTube videos of, they're called day in the life. So day in the life of a software engineer, day in the life of an electrical engineer. And so this is also a way that you can kind of look at just a little glimpse of the real life of an engineer. Because when I first started, when I was a freshman, I knew I liked the material. I loved the material. I loved it for a very long time. But what does somebody actually do, right? You're not actually getting a homework and that's your job, is to solve circuit problems. That's not the way that it works. So what is someone actually doing? That is what you need to focus on.
I think that's great advice and a good reminder of being proactive in where you want to go and creating. I know when I was coming through and starting out in my career, and even kind of my last years of college, we were encouraged, you got to network, you've got to network. And it was such a weird concept and a weird term. But what it really means is talk to people, reach out, ask questions. And I know when I have people coming in to me who are coming in out of school, the ones who ask the questions are the ones where I'm motivated to help them understand, because I know that they want to learn and that they want to grow. So asking a question actually shows your interest in the topic. It does not reflect poorly on you. So I think that's an important thing. We've got a really good question, thinking about kind of who we are and the different work environments that we're in, especially in a technical and a STEM type of career. Do you ever feel like, and I'll put this out here, raise your hand if you want to be someone to answer this one, this concept of feeling like you're an imposter, that you don't belong where you are, and how do you address that? How do you kind of overcome that uncomfort level? So anyone who wants to take that one on? Emerson, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, like after working on my startup for about 5 years, or a couple of startups for about 5 years, I worked at another company as a software engineer for about almost 2 years. And there was a point in time where I was thinking about, I think it's time for me to move on. This company is not doing well. I don't really like the mission. I'm gonna go do something else. And I remember looking at some positions. Even some people reach out to me, and I would just look at their requirements there, and it would be like, well, you need 5 years of experience. I'm like, does mine count as 5? If I was doing my startup, I was not really doing software engineer at that point in time, partially kind of thing. So I would always hesitate myself and not really thinking I had the what was right for the position. And then, I eventually interviewed at Apple, and then I studied a lot for the interview, because you prep, you do all those things, and I realized, should I really be prepping? Maybe I should already know all these things. Why am I even prepping? So I will always even be hesitant about that. And then, after joining Apple, I had about a month or so before starting, and then at that point, I would study a lot more of all the things around. I literally touched every single part of iOS for a refresher on everything. How do you store data? How do you manipulate that? All the new technologies. I wanted to know and be great at absolutely everything before joining, because I was afraid that maybe after joining, they will realize, oh, Emerson doesn't know this, what the hell, or doesn't know that. Like maybe he's not as good as he says he is, and something. So I was I was really afraid, really concerned about that. After I joined Apple, like all of that went away. All my teammates, they were first of all, they were great, but then I also realized, one of the things that I like the most is that they are very open about the things they don't know. They don't pretend to know everything. They know that they're great at this, and they're not great at that, but they're not afraid of it. They just ask, and then they get paired up with someone else who is pretty good at it, and they both learn, they both do stuff. So, and that's kind of how I overcame that part as well. I started expressing more like, like I'm really good at this part, but this part I'm not. And then I started reaching out to people in my team, or those people reaching out to me and saying, yes, I can help you here, I can help you there. And that's how it's been. They're really not being afraid to say the things that you don't know, because that also shows that you want to learn. That also shows that you're open, that you're honest, and you want to improve on those areas. And there is no growth, if you're not challenging yourself also to go in other areas as well. So that all of that helped me a lot.
Oh, that is great. What I heard from that is, in the beginning, it's embrace the fear, because that fear motivated you to do the study, do the background, and to prepare yourself well. And then once you got the job, acknowledge what you don't know, and then again, reach out and talk to people so that you can share what you know, and you can ask others. And that's part of being a team. Everybody is contributing something, but not everybody has to contribute everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was also a little bit more to add to that. I would say it was also the pressure of looking around, and my team of all people in there, or my direct team, and I'm like, I am the only Latino here, meaning that I represent my entire race. So if I do bad, everyone does bad. So it's like the extra pressure that you have there, and then changing that mentality from being I'm the only one to I'm the first one kind of thing. Also helped me a lot.
That's great. Anyone else want to add to that, especially this concept of imposter system? Yes, please. Katya.
Yeah, I have a really fun trick that I have learned throughout my many experiences with imposter syndrome. So something that I do, and I recommend all of you start doing this as well, because it really truly helps, is what I've started doing is I have started to actually, every time that I'm feeling that imposter syndrome, I'm feeling like I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't know why they chose me for this. This is not for me. They're going to find out that I don't actually know what the heck I'm doing. So every time I have those moments, I make sure to sort of sit myself down and really feel that. Sorry about my dog, the mailman is here. So I make sure that I really feel that feeling. I want to feel that fear. I want to feel that I can't do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then, because it always happens, once I do it, once I finish that job, once I successfully accomplish the task, once I do it, I sit down again and I let myself feel that again. I want to remember that I thought I couldn't, and then remember, oh, I did. And then next time that you feel that way again, you're going to remember those two things. You're going to remember, oh, I remember when I thought I couldn't. At that point, it felt like there was no way I would ever be able to do this, but I did it. And once you have a bunch of those little experiences, I'm now at the point where when I feel again like, oh no, I'm not going to be able to, I quickly brush it away and I say, why not? There hasn't been a single moment that I wasn't able to do it. So why would this be any different? And it really, really helps.
Wow, that is deep. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great tip, is to, embrace it, have that moment, and then remember the last time you did that, and the follow-up. I think that's very good to remember what you've done, and celebrate your successes, because I think once you get into the job and you get busy and busy and busy, you're just going from one project to the next. Take a moment, at the close of one project to say, wow, this is what we did. And then dive into the next one. I think that's great. Anyone else? Denice, anything you want to add to that there?
Yeah. I think feeling insecure is something we all experience, whether it's at a job, whether you're in a relationship or with your friends. But I guess bringing it back to the technological viewpoint, I want everyone to remember that everything that exists and that will exist and that has not been invented yet has come because it has been thought of, right? So if you are feeling like you don't belong, well, just think about it. You have to think differently, because who knows, maybe you're the one, because of that insecure experience, that you're, exactly what Katya and Emerson have said, that you'll learn it, you're gonna be like the product expert, and then who knows, maybe you'll build up on that and create the next big thing, right? So whenever we all feel insecure, just say to yourself, no, I belong here, I can do this, and I will do this.
I think that's great. I think that's great. It helps to be kind to ourselves, right? It starts in our own head. And I think that's an important reminder. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Quite a few questions coming in specific to interviewing. And some of the questions are specific to different types of interviews. So I think we can explore that a little bit. Different companies, I think, may approach the interviewing process differently, but I suspect the tips and advice are fairly universal. So can someone kind of talk about either, especially if you're on the end of being the interviewer, the things that you're looking for, what you've seen that you could, if you could follow up with that interviewee and say, hey, next one will be great if, any advice or tips you can offer, and then I'll share mine as well. Anyone want to lead that one? Yes, Emerson, please.
Yeah, I guess I did want to talk about it because I've been interviewing a lot in the last year. We've been very fortunate that despite the pandemic, we've hired a couple people in my team I haven't met them in person yet. So we're still doing that. And the other big thing is, of course, that due to the some injustices that have been happening in the world around racism, a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, including Apple, have doubled down on our diversity and inclusion efforts. So a lot more recommendations, a lot more information, so a lot more training. So we are actually in the process of revamping all the things about hiring every step of the way, how we control biases and all those things. So I guess from a more specific interview perspective, one thing that or one of the things that I love to see personally is the things that that one person, specifically for college students, the things that you do that are outside of their required. If you tell me outside of the classes you're doing, you are working on your own side projects, you are looking into this, you are a member of this or a member of that, you participate in different organizations, you volunteer, like you do all the things, that for me is a sign of that you can take initiative, and also a sign of leadership in some cases. So all those things for me are really huge factors that will put you over the top. Like if I compare two people with the same skill level, that are pretty good, or maybe one a little bit more than the other, but I see these extra things from one individual that will definitely put you over the top, my point of view.
And for those recent interviews, were those done remotely or in person? Because we're now in a whole different world with COVID-19.
All remote.
Okay, and is there specific advice for how to do that? It's not like you can walk in and do that firm handshake. How did this COVID situation change that interviewing process for you?
Well, we have no whiteboards, and the whiteboards online are not that cool. I even asked if we could send people iPads so that they can draw on the iPad, but they said no. But yeah, I think it's been a challenge to adjust that too as well. There is no longer, we give people a break, but it's not like we can take them to grab some food at the cafeteria and just kind of chill with them and get them to know them more on a casual level. So that cannot happen. We don't schedule just like a casual coffee chat right now in the middle of all the WebEx, because there's also the problem, right, of like too much sorry, WebEx, we use WebEx at Apple, but too much online Zoom meetings and whatnot, right? Like for on-site interviews, we do have like 6 of them back to back. And so it could be up to 6 hours, right? For a person to be just sitting down, looking at someone and maybe a break in between. So it's challenging, you know, and, you know, it's yeah, I mean, it just we have to figure it out, I think, how to make it good. And, you know, we're, as I mentioned, like we've done it a couple of times already, hired a couple of people a couple of times. So, but we've had to make adjustments to our process, and we know we've failed that in some cases, and we have to adjust them again, and, you know, improve how we do the interviews.
All right, appreciate that. Anyone else want to add to that? Kind of the interviewing process, you know, tips, hints? Yes, Katya?
Yeah, so this past summer was the very first summer that I hired my own intern. So that was really exciting for me, going from being an intern, being a full-time engineer, and then hiring an intern. So I got to see both sides of the coin, essentially. And two things that really caught my attention from it was going into this whole interviewing process. And when I was looking at resumes, you know, JPL gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes. So just narrowing it down and being fair to everybody was really, really time consuming. And so that's really when I realized that keywords are so important in your resume. There's no way that we were going to be able to go through 800 resumes. So what we were doing is we were narrowing them down based on keywords. So you really have to have your keywords in there. The ones that we particularly used were PCB, Altium, because we wanted somebody that already knew the specific software that we were using. So even though you may have had experience with PCB design, if you didn't have experience with the software we used, unfortunately, that would have cut you out. And the reason for that is that we only have 10 weeks for the internship. We had a 12-layer board that the intern needed to do. We don't have the time to teach somebody an entire design tool. So that's why we were looking for somebody that already had that experience. And even if you had it, but you didn't write down the actual name, you just put PCB design, then you would have been cut out of my search. And that's just something that goes along with, you know, having so many resumes in the pool. It's so difficult to narrow them down. And the last one that we used was Verilog, which is for FPGA. And we didn't actually need somebody that knew how to do it very well. We just needed somebody that knew what it was. So even if they just had it as, you know, a very, very, very basic skill, that's all we needed. So again, if you had taken classes on Verilog, you've done a couple projects, but you weren't really too comfortable with it, and for that reason, you didn't put it on your resume, again, even though you would have been perfectly qualified to be my intern, you would have been cut out as well. So that's why it's really important to have all of those keywords down on your resume. And then the next thing that I noticed was that, so when I actually was interviewing the candidates, I had 3 that were my top 3. I had my number 1 pick, my number 2 pick, and my number 3 pick. You basically kind of already know based on the resumes, and the interview is either going to solidify it or just shake things up completely, which is what happened. My number 1 pick, when we spoke to him, he was so bored. He was just so monotone. I kind of just sounded like he didn't really care, didn't really want to be there. He was answering our questions, but they weren't really detailed answers. They were just sort of one-liners. And this was my number 1 candidate. This was my candidate where I saw his resume and I just thought, you could get a full-time job right here, right now with this resume if your interview goes perfectly. Like, that's how great of a candidate he was. And right after that interview, I was like, no, it just did not go well at all. Like, he just was not into it at all. And the thing about JPL, you have to love our work. You have to love what we're doing. You have to be passionate about space exploration, about technology. And the candidate that was the number 3 candidate. He was the one that was just, He showed up, he was prepared, he had an amazing answer to everything that we threw at him. We put him on the spot with some technical questions. He didn't really know the answer to all of them, but he, managed to get himself there. After the interview, he sent us an email with pictures of his textbook for the specific sections with the answers for what he missed. He's like, I'm studying this right now. So, he showed up, he really did. And he was my number 3. I was 100% sure going into this that I was going to pick the number 1 resume. And so it just really goes to show, that when you get to that interview, it's so important to show up, to be there, be present, be prepared, be excited, because that's really what did it for my intern. And he's doing an amazing job.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important to think of the interview. The interview is actually going both ways. Not only are you we entering interviewing the candidate should also be interviewing the company. So again, show up, want the job. Otherwise, apply your time appropriately. Go after the ones that you want. It's not just checking boxes. Anyone else? Denice, you want to add to that as well?
Yeah. Oh, well, that was great. I enjoyed hearing that too, because that's pretty much summarizes everything you need to know as a student and going for an internship, right? But if you're getting ready to graduate, one thing I can tell you for sure is, Emerson even touched on it as well, that expect all interviews to be, unfortunately, through a video conferencing service. So I think in that respect, you guys are different than any of us right now on the panel. That maybe you're gonna find your first job through the internet, right? So on that regard, just based on how I've conducted meetings on Zoom and all that stuff, just remember to smile and present your best self as much as you can in front of the camera. But and don't lose the faith. This is a pandemic, right? But people are still working. People are still hiring. Don't get yourself down too much. This is just a short blip in humanity's history. We will continue. We will go on.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We're down to our last 9 minutes. I'm checking the comments here. And I wanted to kind of wrap up with a couple more questions. One of them, since we're on, actually, this is a good one. I think this is an important one. Real quick, Katya, you talked about those keywords. That's not something I'm familiar with. Is that a different section of the resume, or are you just going through the resume looking for keywords?
So at least for us and for a lot of companies, when you submit your resume, we have a specific tool where we can search for specific words, and it'll pull out all of the resumes that have those words in the resume. So that's why it's really important to be detailed about your work. You can't just say experience with circuit design, because you could be experienced with circuit design, but if somebody is specifically searching, for example, PCB, you're not going to come up. So you have to make sure to be as detailed as possible with the different types of things that somebody could potentially search when looking for a candidate. So that's basically the way that it works with a lot of those resume pools.
Okay, so in trying to think about what those keywords might be, especially if you're in school and haven't entered the workforce, it's kind of hard to figure out what is important. It sounds like what I'm hearing is if you, those upper division classes, if they focused on a specific technology, a specific software, a specific topic, you want to make sure you name that.
Yeah. Also, if you go to the actual job posting, you'll see a list of requirements. So that's also a perfect way, if you satisfy any of those, to make sure that you incorporate them into your resume. Because if those are the requirements, you already know that those are the exact keywords that they're looking for. Don't lie, but if you do satisfy them.
Very good point. Thank you. So the other question I want to throw out to the group is a good one. how did you overcome failing an exam or getting rejected or just failures in general? How do you recover from that ego blow? What are your tips on that? Because it is a part of, it's a part of the job. Anybody want to take that one on? Go ahead, Emerson.
So when I was in college, and I was still doing my computer engineering path, and I figured I'm gonna get a job somewhere, and I'm gonna do robotics or some computer engineering related thing. The only thing that came to mind, I don't know why I didn't think about Apple, but the only thing that came to mind was Microsoft, and maybe joining the Xbox team down in Mountain View. So I thought that was a good fit, and I think it was at the SHEP conference where I met them and I talked to them and I applied, and I got rejected. And I think that was the only one that the only one that I applied got rejected. And at that point is when I started doing my the app that I was building, and then when I launched it, I was fortunate enough that I didn't know what a startup was, but I had an investor reach out to me, and he wanted to talk, and he was asking me about my business model, and I had no idea what a business model was. But either way, he was a really good mentor, and then at that point, I just realized that opportunity that I could do something on my own, that I had something that had wings, I had something that had legs, and I could build on top of that, and I can double down on that thing that I did have, as opposed to trying to look for a job. And I don't know where I got into entrepreneurship, so it was not really on purpose that I had planned it all the way, and it was fun. So I was able to overcome that, and then eventually I did apply to Microsoft again in the future, and then through Skype, and then I said no to them, but that was a different story.
All right, well, thank you for that. We've got a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else want to answer that question? Yes, go ahead. Katya.
Yeah, so the biggest ego blow that I had actually was when I transitioned from community college to the four-year university, which UCLA is on the quarter system. So it was just, by itself, it was a devastating transition, because going from a semester to quarters, and then on top of that, being in now purely engineering courses, it was just extremely, extremely difficult. And the very first test midterm that I took, I scored the lowest out of everybody in a class of about 200. So that is just, I don't even know how to explain that feeling, when you're coming out of a place where you're used to doing very, very well. When I was at community college, I was a 4.0 student. I got into UCLA with 2 full rides. So I was feeling pretty good. But then I come in and I am now surrounded by people who everybody here was top of their class. Everybody here is used to being the number one. And I am now the number, 200 out of 200. So it was just a really, really dark time for me, because I started letting all of those thoughts in of maybe I really don't belong here. Maybe I should just try to think about a plan B. And I remember that I also kind of like what Emerson was saying. I felt a lot of that pressure about who I was. I'm a woman, I'm a Latina. There's nobody here that looks like me. Maybe I shouldn't be here either. Maybe I don't belong here either. Me doing so badly, is that going to affect anybody else? Are they going to see another Latina name come up and they're going to be like, oh no, because remember the other girl, when she scored so terribly, she couldn't even pass her lower division class. So you start to let all of these thoughts in, and it's just a really scary thing to have to go through. And the first thing that I had to do was let go of all of that, because it is dead weight. That's all it is. It's not helping. It's not going to help you pass this class. It's not doing anything like that. So once I started to really let go of all of that and started focusing on where was I failing, what could I be doing better study-wise, how can I really help myself with this transition, when I was able to sort of get back on the road. And yeah, I didn't fail the class at all. I actually ended up doing slightly above average. So it all
Great.
ended up working out.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's a good reminder to stick to it and let go of the dead weight.
Mhm.
I'm going to pass it over back to Danielle because I know we're wrapping up now. We've got maybe 90 seconds left, 60 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so whoever thought that that was amazing, like me, can we put something in the chat thanking all of our panelists? That was really awesome. We covered a lot. If your question wasn't answered, don't worry, we are going, I took them down and we are going to ask the panelists to write a couple notes for their answers, and then we'll post that in the Jumpstart community. So you can go back there and see, because I know there were maybe 2 or 3 that didn't get answered. I'm also going to put right here in the chat our survey. So please take this survey so you can give us some feedback on this session. One thing that I think I wanted to let people know that I thought was really important when we were talking about imposter syndrome, if that topic interests you and kind of ways that you can, we all identify with it, but how you can kind of deal with it in a professional setting, I recommend taking the 3 o'clock session that's called Tactical Diplomacy. And you guys on the panel, if you want to take it too, we'll make sure that you get the links. I actually took that session for professionals about a month or so ago, and it was really awesome. It was kind of how you can use kind of the cultural, what would seem to be cultural setbacks for Black and Brown people, and use them to empower yourself in professional settings. So I encourage folks to take that. And thanks everyone again. Mindy, am I missing anything?
Nope. I was just going to remind everyone to definitely do the survey. It's really helpful when we're trying to plan the rest of our sessions, and any feedback is great. Thank you so much to the panel. It was really awesome. As you can tell in the chat, everybody really enjoyed it. So great job and great session.
All right.
So can I quickly plug the open session at the end of the day, 4 o'clock, 30 minutes. No pressure. If you want to just be able to network or just meet other peers, please join us. I think everyone, it's the links to it are in the community. I'll be there. You can ask me anything. Again, no pressure. If you want to talk about the elections, if you want to talk about COVID, or just meet other friends, please join us.
Yes, and 3 o'clock, there's either tactical diplomacy or financial literacy, both very important. So
Both very good.
yes. All right, folks, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, panelists. You guys are awesome. That was fantastic. I learned something.
Thank